Oh, hello, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome, everybody, to Mental Health Monday. And today we are talking about toxic relationships. Hello, everybody, and how you can protect your mental health. Specifically, we are talking about a really awesome topic, antagonistic relational stress. And I can't wait to get into this conversation. But before we begin, there's three things I want to say to you guys. Number one, I want to say that if you want to get notifications on when I go live, if you want to get information about healthy relationships, how you can protect yourself, more detailed information, I want you to text the word LOVE to 87948 and you get on my list and we will then have wonderful exchanges. On Sunday, I'm doing my book club. We've been talking about healthy relationships there. Today, we're going to talk about healthy relationships and mental health and all things professional. We're licensed therapists and we're giving you all the juice from our experience. So be sure to do that. Second thing I want to tell you guys, y'all follow me on Instagram, Coaching with Dr. Alicia. Please do that. And that's how you get more information on what my topics are each week and my topics for my book club, all of the know about healthy relationships, mental health, couples counseling, trauma, breaking free from trauma, just all of the things that we need. We need these things. And then third, if you want to reach out to me, and if you want to work with me on a personal level, one-on-one, you can go to coachingwithdralicia.com. And so that way you can contact me and someone from my team will get back to you and then we can talk privately. We can talk privately and confidentially. So, but today I am so happy. I am welcoming back. Y'all remember Dr. Debra? Say hello to Dr. Debra Dantzler. Yay, Dr. Deb. How you doing?
Oh my God. Well, Dr. Alicia, thank you so much for having me back. I'm so grateful to be here. I love talking about this topic.
Yeah, let me tell you, y'all don't know Dr. Debra. Dr. Debra is got it going on. Let me tell you, she is not only a therapist, but she's got her practice, 3D psychotherapy. I see it. Y'all follow her on Instagram. You see the title there. Not only that, but she's got multiple years of experience. She owns her own practice. Hello. And I do believe, if I remember off the top of my head, you also have a CADC license. Are you?
So I have the Master Addiction Counselor credential is what.
Addiction counselor. Listen, y'all, she's in Georgia. And if you got some addiction issues, please sure to hit her up in the state of Georgia. But yes, thank you for that. So she's got a degree in substance abuse, can help you with addictions. And not only that, but she is my go-to person when I want to talk about narcissistic personalities and toxic relationships. She's an expert in this. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I was on Instagram because I got an Instagram crush on you, Dr. Debra. So follow her on Instagram. I got an Instagram crush on Dr. Debra. And I saw on her page one day something called antagonistic relational stress. And I went, uh-oh. I've never heard of that word, by the way. And I said, wait, this is a descriptive word that reminds me a little bit of narcissism that everybody likes to throw out. Armchair therapists, y'all know, like to throw this out. But let me ask everybody in the chat, do y'all know what antagonistic relational stress means? Let me see some definitions in the chat. What do y'all think? Hey, everybody. Look, London Price, how you doing? Oh, Landon. How you doing, Landon? I can't see. Dr. Vibe, yes, from Toronto. How you doing? How you doing? Clean Coochie Beats. That's my guy right there. What's up? Dr. O, Cash Content. Hey, what's up, Cash Content? Cash Content. That's what's up. Get some cash nowadays. Kendra Cole, hello. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you, ladies, and Dr. Boyce for helping us through our trauma-filled lives. We appreciate the hard work. Listen, our entire history on the face of these here United States of America has been full of trauma. It's been full of some wonderful moments, but trauma nonetheless. But yeah, so MomTube is saying some of those that have antisocial personality disorders, psychopaths. Okay, MomTube, how you doing? MomTube is weighing in. She's throwing out some heavy hitting diagnoses. But while y'all in here thinking about what is antagonistic relational stress, we're going to have Dr. Debra come on. Dr. Debra, start us off. What is antagonistic relational stress?
Okay, thank you so much. So actually, you kind of actually alluded to how we got here, right? With this nomenclature, right? With this naming, because like you said, the armchair psychologist, pop culture, people have overused and kind of really bastardized this word narcissist. And everybody who is mean to somebody else is automatically a narcissist. And this concept of narcissistic abuse, which is a very real thing that causes people very real pain. But it has gotten a little watered down in our pop culture language. And so a couple of things, and that's one of the underlying drivers to the shift of this naming, right? And so this idea of antagonistic relational stress is really what the individual experiences as they're in relationship with somebody who has antagonistic personality.
Oh, right? So what kind of personality is this? Y'all listen up.
And listen so,
up. Your partner, your ex is not narcissistic. They're antagonistic. And Dr. Debra, tell us, what is that?
Yes. And so you probably are familiar with this. So I'm going to get into a little bit of the weeds of it, right? If we talk about abuse by any other name, does it still hurt as much, right? And yes, this idea of a shift from a diagnostic focus to more of a descriptive focus. When we talk about antagonistic personality, we're talking descriptive and not diagnostic. Because as you know, if we actually look at the strict criteria that's in our Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5, our DSM-5, actually, I think it's 0.674%. It is less than 1% of the population that actually qualifies for a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, right? And so if you say, oh, there's such a small amount that qualify for the disorder, yet we're seeing these behaviors, we're seeing these patterns in the personalities. So what does that mean, right? And so in 2022, there was a personality work group when they were working on the DSM-5. And they were looking at making those shifts to those cluster B personality diagnoses. And they really shifted from, again, this strict diagnostic criteria to things that are more of a trait focus.
Yes.
Right? So we're looking at traits. And what are those traits that we're looking at? And we're going to talk a little bit about some acronyms to know those traits. There's something called the 5-factor personality trait model.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
I just want to say the 5-factor personality model, you guys, is scientific. Myers-Briggs, there's no science behind that. All the ones, there's not much science behind personality test. If you're an introvert, extrovert, there's really nothing there. However, the 5 personality traits, there's lots of research and lots of science behind its validity, accuracy. Validity means accuracy, and it's reliability, which means consistency. And those are 2 criteria that you have to have for something to be real in our world. So yes, the 5 personality types, y'all can look this up, but I'm sure Dr. Deborah's going to go into it. Go right ahead.
So so as they're looking at these traits, and they're talking about the 5-factor trait model, there's an acronym. It's called OCEAN, right?
Yes.
So O is for openness, C is for conscientiousness, E is for extroversion, A is for agreeableness, and N is for neuroticism. And so when they're looking at these personalities from kind of histrionic all the way over to antisocial, we're looking at these traits and we're looking at them becoming more them shifting as we're looking at the intensity of the experience and how they become more negative and antagonistic and harmful, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference between somebody who's showing up histrionic and somebody who's really antisocial, right? And they're open.
So what do we got to look at? What are the traits we need to look at to be able to recognize? Because people can be in this relational stress situation and they can't see the forest for the trees. They don't even know that they're dealing with somebody. It's not you, and you internalize it and think it's you. It's not you. You're just dealing with a difficult person. So go ahead, tell us, what is it?
Yes, exactly. And so this idea of like I said, with the openness, if we're looking at an antagonistic personality, they're going to be very low on openness, right?
Okay.
They're not very open. They're very closed in their thinking and their beliefs, in the conscientiousness. They're going to be very low in conscientiousness. They're not going to think about other people. They're going to probably be very self-centered. In their extroversion, they're going to be very high in their extroversion. This is where we kind of get to see those grandiose behaviors that come in the narcissistic family, right? Those big emotional feels and outbursts of people with the borderline personalities, right? So the thing with antagonistic personality, it spans those personality diagnoses that we would have had before. So instead of just putting it in a narcissistic box, an antagonistic personality could technically have a diagnosis of borderline. They could have a diagnosis of antisocial. They could have a diagnosis of something else. But it's where they fall on these things, whether they're like, are they low on open? Are they low on conscientiousness? Are they high on extroversion? Are they really, really low on agreeableness, right? Is there where you're the highway? And are they high on that neuroticism, right? And so these are the kind of things that we as the clinician would be looking for and listening for if we are working with somebody who is coming in experiencing antagonistic relational stress. Another reason they've shifted this perspective is, as clinicians, I can't diagnose the person you're interacting with. I can't diagnose your parent. I can't diagnose your boss. I can't diagnose your partner because of their behavior. I can't say they are a narcissist. What I can say is what you're coming and showing me is the remnants of the impact of that relationship. Right? So it's how that shows up. And there have been studies on this. And what's been shown is that antagonistic relationships are characterized by the lowest levels of things like love, responsiveness, and humility. And participants in antagonistic relationships are significantly higher, have significantly higher levels. And we say significant, I mean statistically significant, right? Less than 0.1, right? Of depressive symptoms anxiety, stress as compared to control groups. So we see that what we're looking at is real life experience. It's not just the armchair conversation of this person's a narcissist and they're just being mean to me. These are real life, real impact that people are experiencing, and not just even with the mental health, it also impacts the physical health with the GI issues and the high blood pressure and all of those other ways as well. And so when we have somebody who comes to us and says, I'm struggling, I'm having low motivation, and I'm on edge all the time, and we do that history and we try to figure out like what's happening in your life and how are you spending your time, when we are listening for who's in their world, who are they interacting with, because this is relational. Right?
Yes.
It's more than just somebody being mean to them. It is a consistent pattern over time of being in interacting with somebody who's highly conflictual, right? Who's very rigid, their way or the highway. They're antagonistic, meaning they do things like gaslight, manipulate,
like to keep stuff going.
Yep. And that hypercriticism, those little paper cuts of blaming, right? Which and then they're either very victim-y, like, oh, woe is me, nobody understands me, or they're very volatile, like, oh, everything is your fault, and they're very entitled.
No accountability. No accountability, no empathy, no being responsible, none of those things. And you know, that's interesting because people on the receiving end to that are running to therapy with these GI symptoms and this pattern. And it's funny you mentioned this because for me, even though I do see couples, and even though I will see elements of this low openness, they don't have the conscientiousness that I want, or no, very rigid, which doesn't work in any relationship. And when I see these things, even I don't really give a diagnosis of a personality disorder. Like a personality disorder is just, first of all, even if you're a licensed therapist, you have to have a lot of training to be able to really diagnose a personality disorder. And I will just, even in my notes and everything, I will be very descriptive, more so than I am diagnostically, because it don't even really make a difference. At the end of the day, I'm really only dealing with the patterns of behavior. And so I want to move on and talk about patterns right now, but I want to say hello to everybody. I see y'all coming in here. I see y'all moving in. Welcome everybody. Some of you guys who just joining us. We are talking about breaking toxic relationships. I'm going to be talking to Dr. Deb about these patterns that you'll notice in your relationship that is not good. And we just talked about giving a description and a definition of antagonistic relational stress. We ain't using narcissism anymore. We're not pointing the finger at everybody else talking about how they narcissists. No, we're going to talk about the experience that you had actually in the relationship and how you're supposed to know this hurts. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody yet again, be sure to text the word love, LOVE, to 87948. You'll get information about all the topics I have every Monday. When we raise awareness, we're raising awareness so y'all know about healthy relationships. And that is what we're doing on Monday. Also, you get information from me about healthy relationships. Text the word LOVE to 87948. Follow me on Instagram. I'm almost at 10,000 followers. I'm almost there. I'm so close. It's like every time I get close, I don't quite make it. So I'm almost there. But not only for me, follow me because you'll get information about show topics. You also get great information. I try to put as much stuff up there as I can to help everybody who's watching this. And then be sure you can contact me at coachingwithdralicia.com. For individual, I work with couples mostly. I mostly work with couples. And of course, you can contact everybody in the state of Georgia. You need to reach out to Dr. Debra Dantzler. And she is at 3D Psychotherapy. It's her practice. It's my practice too, coaching with Dr. Alicia, but wealth of information we got here. And so I want to come back and I want to ask everybody here in the chat who's joining me today, let me know how many of you guys were in a toxic relationship. Let me know who was in a toxic relationship. Do you know somebody in a toxic relationship? If you do, just hit the like button and share it with them and tell them, check this out, because we got an expert on here that's going to talk about these patterns. And y'all let me know if you recognize yourself. Wait, Willard is gonna wait. What's up with Willard? There's something going on in the chat. What y'all doing? Anyway, Willard is going to be, what is this? Willard is going to bring trouble to those homeowners. Who is Willard? I don't understand that. Correction officer for lockdown. Okay. All right, correction officer, tell us and anybody else, what are you going to do? That's why people have no contact. Yes. Okay. People do go no contact. But before we get to what to do, Dr. Deb, please tell us, what is the pattern? Because that's what I work with when I work with couples. I have them recognize the pattern, the dysfunctional patterns in the relationship, and we try to work to disrupt it. One thing is to stop being so rigid, but tell us, how are people supposed to know if they have this toxic pattern in a relationship?
Okay, I think that's a great question. So we're talking about kind of intimate relationships, but when we're talking about antagonistic relational stress, I just want to point out that it is, since it's relational, it can happen between any relationships. So it can happen in the workplace. It could happen in the church house. It can happen in the family. It can happen between parent and adult child. It could happen between adult parent and child. It could happen between siblings and other extended people. It could happen in our social groups and things like that. When we recognize that we are engaging with a person, and honestly, the body doesn't lie, right? The body keeps score. The body will tell us before the brain, before the prefrontal cortex will ever let us know, put words to that something isn't right here, right? And that pattern of behavior, that and what that looks like, right? And so at first, when we engage in these relationships, they could feel like the best thing on the face of the earth, right? Right? Like that dopamine rush is so strong. And I mean, it's you call it love bombing, but this idea of feeling seen like you've never been seen, feeling heard like you've never been heard, being validated like you feel like you've never been validated before. And they're just asking all these questions and wanting to get to know you on such a deep level. And so that initial orientation that really kind of sucks us in to this what we'll see as a cycle, and then over time that rush of wonderfulness, right, will slowly start to dissipate, right? It'll slowly start to shift, and I call it like paper cuts over time. And it might start real subtle, right? Like, oh, you wore the purple shirt for that? Like, what were you thinking, right? And it just seems like, oh no. And then we find ourselves on this defensive, right?
Yes.
And then it gets more and more intense, right? And it might go from slight critiques to maybe more blatant, outright belittling and hypercriticism. There might be some very blatant manipulation of, well, if you don't do this for me, then I'm not going to, do this for you. There could be gaslighting, right? Where it's like, oh, I never said that. That didn't happen. Oh, you're too sensitive. You're just making that up. Or you're making a mountain out of a molehill, which is, and this kind of gaslighting. And so all of that starts, and this messaging that comes with it that basically says, this blaming messaging that says, it's your fault that I'm being this way. And you can be different, so I can be different, right? So it keeps people in this cycle that I call the slap kiss cycle.
Yes. Slap
Right?
kiss cycle. It's like I'm building you up, putting you up on a pedestal, and then the interest wanes because it's all the excitement is, oh, you're so wonderful. It's the black and white thinking. Oh, you're so marvelous and so wonderful. And then as soon as someone in a relationship starts talking about how they feel, as soon as they start becoming vulnerable, it becomes so uncomfortable. I find even in the couples that I work with, this vulnerability piece, they feel soon as they're on the receiving end of someone being vulnerable with them, opening up and talking to them about how they feel, it could be something that they did. And it's not like you're blaming someone. It's just saying, I feel this way when this happened, and I want to bring this to your attention. Someone who's antagonistic has such low self-esteem that I find that what they'll react to, they won't show any empathy whatsoever. They won't listen to what the other person is trying to say, number one. And then number two, they just get defensive. Like you said, they just want to say, well, you said this. And then it ends up escalating into something where if you had just listened to what the other person was saying, someone comes to you sincerely, y'all out there, if y'all partners come to you sincerely about something that you may have done that hurt them, you instantly soften. And if you feel the need to harden up, you are being antagonistic. How many of y'all know people like this? Can't say nothing to them. They take no accountability for anything. They think it is an attack against them as a person.
Absolutely. The antagonistic personality is like thinking about like Iron Man with that hole in the middle. It's a giant hole of insecurity. And they're just really vulnerable. So anything they perceive as an attack towards that hole is met with that slap, right? It's met with that resistance. It's met with that deflection and that blaming, right? And because there's that level of blaming, part of that antagonistic relational stress is this messaging that it's my fault, right? Which again, putting, think about like a slot machine, right? Why are slot machines so effective? Because you put the coin in, you pull the lever, you put the coin in, you pull the lever. It pays out just often enough to keep the person sitting at the machine. So it's that intermittent reward of just as they given enough slaps, now they're going to give a bunch of kisses. And when the kisses come, it reminds us of the love bombing phase. And it's like, yes, we're almost back there. We're back there. And then boof, let down again. Right. And so the awareness of those patterns, right, of being on the defense, of recognizing there's a sense of self-blame, of trying to control things that are outside of our control, of future faking and lies, right?
Yes.
So that's telling us, oh, well, if you make chicken tomorrow, then I'm going to be really nice to you. And then they don't even come home the next day for, you spent like 7 hours making the chicken or whatever, and so these behaviors that the body is automatically responding to, which is why we talked about those GI issues. We find that we have shoulders as earrings all the time or a clenched jaw. Listen to your body. It knows it is responding to it at that cellular level. It's responding to the antagonism. And so then after it has these consistent, like wearing down the person like water over a rock in a lake, just kind of wears them down over time, then a couple of things can happen at that point in the next part of the cycle, where it's the discard phase, right? If the antagonistic person discards their victim, basically, then that's it. Like, they're discarded. There's no, they might come back once because they're going to discard them for finding new supply. If that new supply doesn't work, they'll come back. But if they discard, that's it, right? But if the person experiencing antagonistic relational stress goes to therapy, does their awareness, acceptance, and action, recognizes that, okay, I see what's happening here, and I see that it's not my fault, that I have choice and agency, and I can do some things here, and I can leave this relationship.
Woo.
If decide to discard, now that is going to activate all of that antagonistic person, and they are going to react
because they're so insecure. Okay, that is my next. Let me tell you, Debra, Dr. Debra, you are so brilliant, because that is my next question. Okay, everybody, we just talked about what is antagonistic relational stress. So we talked about that at the beginning. So be sure, if this sounds like somebody you know, don't send it to them. Send it to the person on the receiving end of this, because we don't want to make people feel bad, but we do need to raise awareness. Secondly, we now know how to know if this is happening to us. Did y'all listen to what Dr. Debra said? She said, when you're interacting with somebody and you walk away from that interaction, your body is telling you, get away, pay attention. And I don't care who this is. It could be people on your job. It could be people you're in an interpersonal relationship with, which I'll talk about that later, because that's a little more difficult to get away from that person. But you still need to plan on how to get away. But it could be someone, anybody that you're interacting with, a family member, employment situation. It could be all sorts of things. Pay attention to what your body is telling you. Your body is telling you some don't seem quite right. And don't be so open, because I'm certain people who get in on the receiving end of this probably tend to be open. They score really high on openness, and they're very flexible. So you're already kind of conditioned to be accepting, to ignore what your gut is telling you. Don't ignore your gut. Yes. Don't ignore your gut. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is this amnesia. Listen, if you're caught into this pattern, you will get amnesia when they start honeymooning you again. You're going to forget. You're going to forget about all those terrible things. You really should keep a diary and write it all down, specifically to remind yourself what you just went through. But I really think that you need to understand the psychology of why casinos make so much money. The psychology of why they take your money. It is like pimps and hoes. It really is. It is terrible. Your reward is so intermittent that you want to do it more, because you don't know when the next one is going to come. You can't predict it, but you know it's going to come. So just understand that this happens. And I really want to talk about, I know it's definitely ways in which you can protect yourself if you identify this in yourself. But I also want to talk to you, Debra, about how can people in relationships like this, some of us have children. We got children by these people. We got to somehow are forever connected with on the receiving end of this sort of dynamic. Even if you get out of it, you still gonna have to co-parent with many of these people. And y'all know about co-parenting. I see y'all in the chat. Y'all know about co-parenting with these difficult individuals. So how do you protect yourself? Because sometimes it's not the easiest thing to just get up and leave right on the spot. What is it? What do you tell people and how to protect yourself?
Yes. No, that's an important point, because, when we're in these antagonistic relationships and we are experiencing that antagonistic relational stress, I think obviously the first point of healing is awareness. One, we have to be able to know what it is and what's happening, right? Because we're going to come to the therapist's office with those depressive symptoms, with those anxious symptoms and things like that. But really, for the therapist to do the good, deep history to be able to help the client put together those pieces and recognize, when I am in these spaces with this person, these are the things that I'm experiencing. When I'm over here in these other spaces with good people like Dr. Alicia, I'm not experiencing those things. So let me recognize those patterns and how that relationship is negatively impacting me. And then once they have that awareness, then they have choice and agency about what they're going to do. And it is not an easy decision to stay or to go, because depending on whom this person is, they may not be able to actually go that easy, right? If it's their boss, if it's their mom or their dad, or if it's their co-parent, right? Even if they decide to leave the marriage, but there are things like children involved, and this person is going to be in their life for the next double-digit years until the child is an adult. How do we navigate that, right? I think then it goes to the next stage of awareness. If we're going to stay, there's a plan for that. But if we're going to leave, there's a plan for that. And if we're going to leave and we have to do something like co-parent, we can't go no contact with this person, they're going to be in our lives, then we need to have some special skills, right? Some of those skills, because setting boundaries with an antagonistic personality doesn't work. It just doesn't work. They're boundary bulldozers. They don't have any empathy. They don't care. So it's really a futile effort. And we wind up getting sucked in with trying to hold and set boundaries with them, right? We can't change their behavior. We can only hold ours.
Yes.
Right? And so what that looks like is being crystal clear on what we're okay with and doing things like gray rocking. Gray rocking. Gray rocking it's like almost like the old Dragnet. Remember that show, Dragnet? Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. Right? I'm dating myself here.
Yeah, but I love Dragnet. Go ahead.
But it's keeping it to, if we have to co-parent, we're keeping it to the facts, dates, times, specifics, where there's no wiggle room for asking for things like consensus or getting them to understand us. These are things that are not going to happen. And it's usually
no reasoning with these people.
There's not reasoning. It is just the facts. Let's keep it to and let's keep all communication in a way that is crystal clear, documented.
Yes.
And we can have a mediator or a liaison or court, what do they call it? Guardian ad litem, or whomever that oversees any kind of custody or negotiations or things like that. Or just even our attorney, if the divorce is final, right? We want to make sure that we're communicating in writing. And even if something is said verbally during like a child exchange, we want to follow that up with, as per our interaction, right? We are literally treating this like an HR case in some ways, because we have to protect ourselves. Because what has already happened, if we are at that point with this antagonistic personality, we've already gone through the smear campaign. Because we were talking about the cycle, right? The cycle of love bombing, then the paper cuts, then the discard. And what happens after the discard is, if they can't hoover you back in and get you back, they're going to do the smear campaign. They're going to tell everybody that will listen that you're crazy, that it's your fault, that
you were abusing them. when they were the one abusing you the whole time.
Exactly. Because again, they can take no personal accountability and responsibility. So they have no choice but to displace that blame for the failure of the marriage and the relationship on you.
And even if you decide to stay for the time being,
yes,
some of that discounting can still happen. I've seen it happen where they'll smear you, even though they're with you, but they'll paint the picture to everybody around them in a sly kind of way by, eliminating key pieces of information. They only tell what they want other people to hear so that they can be the victim. And everybody can feel sorry for them. Oh, I feel so sorry for you. And I know there's this saying that I never did quite get at first. But then when I started getting into couples therapy, I got it. When they said, beware of the charming husband with the bitchy wife. They used to say that because what's going on behind closed doors, usually these people are very well liked publicly.
Oh, absolutely.
They work so hard to impress other people, but not people in their own who are close to them. Because people who are close to them get to, they're with them all the time and they get to see who they really are.
Absolutely. And what we didn't really get to touch on in terms of this cycle, and a couple of factors, are the innate power differential that can happen between the very charming antagonistic personality and the less powerful a person experiencing the antagonistic relational stress. Usually this person is very charming, very successful, very liked, and they create what we call flying monkeys, where they advocate for the narcissist, the antagonistic personality.
Yes.
They advocate for them. So then then they're also getting the message from that person that this is your fault. So it creates this sense of self-doubt. Like, maybe it is my fault. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Well, maybe if I just try this, and they just keep trying. And then you have those experiences, like you said, where they're discounting the person and smearing them, even with the relationship. And then they try harder, right? There's this cognitive dissonance that happens as a part of antagonistic relational stress, and the sunk cost fallacy of, well, I've been in it this long, I've got to be able to figure out how to make it work. And so, right. And so, and so there's lots of reasons people stay in it before they have that awareness that, no, this isn't working. But once they have that awareness and they decide to leave, but if they have to stay because of that financial coercive control or the power dynamics or even cultural implications, right?
Religion.
And
you're staying in some toxic situations.
Right? Absolutely. Because we don't do divorce in this family.
Yeah, that is one of the most toxic statements I could ever hear. It's just like, no, what I want to hear is, we don't do abuse in this family. That's the words I want to hear.
Yes.
We're going to love each other in this family, because just staying together is not commitment.
Absolutely. You done said a word right there. Yep. Exactly. But if they do stay, then they have to use those kind of same tools, the gray rocking, what we call firewalling, which is, think about like what a firewall is. It keeps your data safe and it keeps out the toxic viruses. And really, it's in some ways, it's the acceptance of being in a loveless marriage.
Oh, and that's I talk to people and they're grieving it. How many years they wasted with somebody, and now they now see the light, and they're just like, I wasted time with somebody when I could have been free.
Yeah. Because again,
stronger and more powerful than you think you are.
Yes. And it's got to break that slap kiss cycle.
Yes.
Because as long as they think it's their fault, that they can change it, that they have any kind of power to make this antagonistic personality think, behave, or do anything different, they're going to stay stuck until they recognize that is not They don't have that power. And then they have to get to this place where they don't take anything personal.
Listen, I wrote it down on my piece of paper. Stop looking for validation from these people. They never going to validate you.
Yeah.
You have got to have a validating environment elsewhere. It
Yes.
can't be with this person. They will never give it to you, and they'll run you crazy. That's the thing. These antagonists, being on the receiving end of antagonistic personality, some of this physical effects on your body, those are the people that are dying, coming up with diseases and illness. And guess what? The antagonistic person is going to bury you. And guess what? They're going to move on to somebody else. You have to understand is that these people, if they're not open to get help, and they wouldn't be if they're really, truly in this way, but they don't live a happy life. They're miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're miserable people. They're not happy, and they'll pretend as if they are, but they are not happy. And I really think that I do want to talk a little bit more about all of this stuff, but I do want to say why I love your gray rock scenario is not to react. And what happens is that if you stop reacting to them, they'll stop getting what they need from you, and they'll speed it up. They'll move on to someone else. So you don't even need to worry about getting rid of someone. All you have to do is let them know that they don't have that hold over you anymore. Taking your power back.
Absolutely. And you are absolutely right about we need community. They need community. They need to come to therapy so they can do the awareness work and recognize this is what's been happening. But once they recognize this is what's been happening, they need a community for themselves. And they need a community where they can do reality testing, because there's been so much gaslighting. They don't know up is down and left is right. They need a community that's going to validate them and celebrate them, because oftentimes these antagonistic personality, if you win an award or you get some sort of recognition, they never celebrate them.
They're jealous.
That ruin the celebrations and things like that. So we need to be able to, if we win an award, we need to know, I can tell Dr. Alicia first, I'm going to get celebrated, and I can go home and maybe share it with them, because I'm not going to take it personal when they say, oh, your little award, or oh, your little recognition, and they minimize and belittle it, right? And so that ability to detach and not take that personal is part of this healing journey to getting to radical acceptance.
Yes.
Antagonistic.
Not being in denial. Wake up. I love my favorite video I see sometimes that come up on social media is Oprah Winfrey and Maya Angelou, when they're sitting there talking about when someone tells you who they are, you believe them. And I just be like, I'm like, yes, say it again, Oprah. Oprah got it going on. She got it, right? When someone tells you who they are, believe them. I think this is so great. I love this conversation. We could keep going, but I do want to ask one last question before we end here. Oh gosh, what was the question? It was coming up for me and I almost forgot. Oh yes, here's my question. My question is related to what to do in situations when you know that you're ready. Because here's the thing. Sometimes when I have couples come in, sometimes couples are too far. They're too far gone, and there's so much resentment built up that it's a little too late. I really feel like couples therapy is good for like a certain window of the relationship. Sometimes the relationship can just be out of range for a really successful relationship. And so you tend to switch your focus. By the way, in case you guys want to know, how you know it's time for couples therapy is when both of you and the other person recognize that the pattern is unacceptable and you already are trying to work on disrupting the pattern, and you want to get another person to come in to help you disrupt this pattern. If both people aren't recognizing that there's toxic patterns going on that both of you are contributing to, then it's a really hard situation. So I just want to put that out there. But once you recognize, what do you do? I know what I do. I just try to say, listen, my goal is not for every couple to stay together. My goal is for all of us to grow. All of us have to learn and grow. Sometimes staying together is not always the best. So what do you do, Dr. Deb? Our last question before we end. Like, what do you do? Like, what do you say to that person when they're just at their wits' end and they really, really feel like they have to go, but they may be scared to do it, and you helping them work through these things? And it could be people right now experiencing some of these. I see y'all in the chat. I'm watching all your statements. What do you say to this person?
I say it's hard. It's a hard decision. It's probably one of the hardest decisions a person will have to make. Ending any kind of significant relationship is not easy, and I validate that for them. And I encourage them that they can do hard things. Mm-hmm. And that they have not come to this decision lightly. They didn't just wake up on a whim and say, oh, he or she was mean to me today, so I'm out. This wasn't something that was a willy-nilly decision that I'd help them go through for themselves. How did you get here to this place of knowing this is the right thing for you? And then I would help them strategize on what the steps are they need to realistically take to make that happen if they really want to leave. And help them understand that it may not be as simple as packing a bag and leaving that day. They may need, if they've been financially coercive controlled and they haven't worked in a while, they're going to need to have a village of support. They're going to probably need to have sources of income. They're going to need to have legal guidance on protecting their rights, protecting their children. So we can talk a little bit about what those steps are and what that looks like, and work on exiting in a way that is safe for them. And we cannot tell the antagonistic personality just when we first have the idea that I'm out.
Yes.
That will literally keep them trapped in maybe even a torture situation. And we talk about antagonistic personality being this descriptor of intensity, right? So it's different if you're dealing with a borderline antagonistic personality, but it's really dangerous if you're dealing with an antisocial antagonistic personality. So we want to make sure that safety is paramount. Yeah. And so when we just help support them in making their decisions.
Yeah, you never know what happens. And, you do have to prepare yourself. And it's terrible because I've worked with, let's just face it, it's mostly women who are on the receiving end of this. Like, maybe on occasion I'll get some men who are on the receiving. Honestly, I'll get some men who are experiencing this, but it's mostly when women who experience these things. And I can tell from the chat, I see y'all in the chat. I can tell from the chat that's normally what I do see. But the thing is that, sometimes it's hard to justify some of this stuff because this person is not physically abusive to you. So it's hard to talk about, we just don't get along. It's more to it than just that. The emotional piece hurts. You're going to say? Mm-hmm.
No, I agree with you. It is, I think that you're right. Like in most times, if we're not seeing a black eye or a broken rib or a broken arm, we're thinking, oh, it's just emotional abuse. But depressive and anxious symptoms cause more disruption to a person's life and long term, it impacts their ability to work. It impacts their other interpersonal relationships. It impacts things like your ability to focus and concentrate. It impacts your memory. It impacts your ability to get out of bed and do basic tasks. It impacts whether you're sitting outside of the Walmart in your car crying because you can't
Yes.
even go inside. And it impacts all of your functioning, your global assessment of function. It impacts your life at so much deeper and longer than those broken bones. And yes, the lethality of a broken bone and bruises and things like that,
It's
yes,
real.
that is much closer to life threatening, but this is life like altering. Like you will be living in a consistent state of pain
Oh.
indefinitely.
Ah.
Is that the choice of life that you want?
Oh, Dr. Debra. Okay, I'm writing everything down. Antagonistic relational stress. We're getting away from calling our exes narcissistic. We're getting to descriptives here. That don't help nobody. Plus, it probably doesn't meet the full criteria anyway. And you can't even. I've been a licensed therapist for a long time, and I have suspicions about people's personality disorders, but it's hard to tell because I feel like one person has bits and pieces of this personality disorder and this, and I can go round and round in circles with that, but I don't care. I get into what is the dynamic, what is happening. Listen, everybody, these people they are not open. They're very rigid. They don't trust anybody, even if there's no reason not to trust somebody. They're not going to trust. They're not conscientious, no self-awareness, very little self-awareness, if anything, and low on agreeableness, not wanting to, very rigid people, not willing to compromise, not willing to be flexible. That's what's important in relationships. We have learned today that if your environment is not validating, and you're in these kind of relationships, you need to seek validation somewhere. You need to create a community of people to validate you. Listen to your body. Your gut is telling you to run, and you need to pay attention to it. Stop being so open. Those openness people tend to be locked in. You get locked in these situations. And I know judges and lawyers who are getting locked into this toxic thing here, and they can compartmentalize and go home to a very abusive situation. So you don't know from the outside what's going on the inside. We do get amnesia when we're in that cycle, when they love bombing you and they telling you they're going to change and do all these things. Unless you see actionable steps, they ain't changing. And then protect yourself. We talked about all the ways to protect yourself. Get some validation somewhere. Stop looking for these people to give you validation. They're not going to do it. Summon everything up. You have the ability to leave. And if you want to leave, there's professionals, 2 of us right here that can talk you through planning how to leave, because we realize that sometimes it's dangerous, could be dangerous to leave. Y'all hit the like button. Share this video with any and everybody. Let me tell you, teenagers need to look at that. I got 2 teens in the house, and I'm telling you, these people don't know. They don't know we're healthy. I'm like, y'all, and it's across the board. I was talking earlier about this. They share their location. If you're dating somebody, it is known that you share your location with no man need to know your location all the time, 24/7. To me, I just like, who does it? And they're like, everybody does it. Everybody shares their location with somebody that they're dating. I don't like that. I don't even have location of my children all the time. I don't even want it. But anyway, so we need to educate people on healthy relationships. And we also need to find out how we can break toxic relationships and protect your mental health. And I want to thank you, Dr. Debra. Let everybody know where to find you. She's doing a CEU I wrote it down, April 18th, 3-hour CEUs for $75. I'm signing up, by the way. Let's see, what am I doing on the 18th? Can I get the recordings if I don't make it?
Yes.
Live? I'm buying your stuff because I need my little CEUs. I got to renew my license this year, so I need my CEUs. So Anyway, she's doing anybody who, even if you're a helping professional, you probably, there's some of my, you know what? I'm going to share this with my students. I have students, I'm a
Okay.
full-time, in case I don't know, I'm a full-time college professor. I'm going to share this with my students because $75, I mean, that's beautiful to get 3 CEUs. I mean, they can't get CEUs, but they need to hear about this stuff. Some of them want to be therapists. So I'm going to share it on my Facebook page. I'm going to look on there and share it. But anyway, tell everybody where to find you and all of that.
All right, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I love being here with you. I so enjoy talking to you every time. And so people can find me. They can follow me on Instagram at the 3D Psychotherapy, and on Facebook at the 3D Psychotherapy. And thank you so much again. This has been such a great conversation.
Yes, and thank you, Dr. Deb. I'm so happy you're back with us, and I'm sure you'll be back with us again because you're my go-to. Anything that has to do with toxic stuff, I feel like, oh, call Dr. Deb. We got to get her back on because you're so fun to work with. I met you in Atlanta, and I just was like, I want to hang out with y'all. You guys are so great. So anyway, goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much. You know how to reach me, coachingwithdralicia.com. Y'all already know to follow me on Instagram, at Coaching with Dr. Alicia. Instagram, I do have a TikTok page. Girl, TikTok be a mess, but I do like TikTok. And then, of course, as always, text LOVE, LOVE, to 87948. Goodbye, everybody.